Hello, and welcome to the 2022-2023 Urban Grant Program webinar for the Capital and Planning Solicitation from the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. This is the Capital and Planning webinar. If you were interested in the program solicitation webinar, that was recorded and it will be posted to our webpage soon. This portion of the webinar is pre-recorded, but we will be having a live Q&A. So along the way, you'll notice that participants will be muted, but during the live Q&A, you can be unmuted if you need to ask your question, or along the way, you can use that Q&A typing function, and we'll try to get to your questions through there. And if we're not able to until the end, we will have plenty of time for questions. Also, closed captions are available at the bottom of your screen. And this webinar will also be recorded and posted to our website. So we're really happy to have you here today. We'll introduce ourselves. I'm Jackie Latham. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Grants Program Coordinator here at the Open Space Authority. This is my contact information. I will be your main contact for the Urban Grant Program, so feel free to email me, and my phone number is also here. And we're also joined today by Megan Drager, our Grants Program Manager, and she'll be helping us with questions. So we'll start off with a land acknowledgement. We'll talk about the Urban Grant Program and then specifics about this cycle and the timeline. We'll talk about the online application in our grant management software called WiseHive, the review process, and have time for questions. So to start off, we acknowledge that the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority works within lands that were originally stewarded by the Waswas, Chochenyo, Mutsun, and Tamian-speaking peoples. Today, we are honored to partner with the Amamutsun Tribal Band and Muwekma Ohlone Tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area in our shared work to protect and restore the environment and connect people to land. And if you're interested in learning more about our tribal partnerships, you can read about it on our website. The Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority conserves the natural environment, supports agriculture, and connects people to nature by protecting open spaces, natural areas, and working farms and ranches for future generations. We've protected over 28,000 acres of land. We currently have 3 preserves open to the public, and we have lots of activities like environmental education, volunteer programs, and community events. And all of these activities and our preserves are free to the public. Measure Q and Measure T were both overwhelmingly passed in 2014 and 2020, and these measures provide the funding and the outline for the Urban Grant Program, the competitive grant program that we're talking about today. If you're interested in learning more about that, you can read the Measure Q expenditure plan on our website. And the Open Space Authority is funded primarily from a $24 annual parcel tax. So the Urban Grant Program has been around since 2016. It's had a few other names, but we call it the Urban Grant Program. We've awarded about 54 grants and almost $4 million in grant awards. And if you're interested in learning more about previously funded projects, you can see our urban success stories on our website. So now we'll talk about the 2022-2023 grant cycle, and specifically the capital and planning solicitation. And here's a screenshot from our guidelines, which we highly recommend that you read through. The guidelines have lots of great information about timeline, application questions, documents, all sorts of things. And we really do suggest that you take some time to read through that before applying. It is on our website along with other materials. So if you go to our website, there's an orange button that says apply, and that will take you to this program materials list. It is quite long, so I'll orient you a little bit to some of the things on here. The first thing is the online application link. And this is really important. This is where the pre-application link is found that you will need to use to apply for the pre-application, and it is required in order to be eligible for the full application. The full application link will also be found through that same portal. The posted recorded links, the workshops will be available here. The guidelines are here, the eligibility map, budget form template, which you'll need. If you have a fiscal sponsor, site control information, which for a capital project will be needed if you're either a landowner or a lease or non-landowner. There's a CEQA form, our district map, a WiseHive tutorial, some other information. Near the bottom, you'll see the Word version is available. This is for reference. So if you wanted to download and see what the questions will be, that's where you can see it. But please use that first online link to submit your application. We cannot accept Word versions turned into us. Then the last link is our Urban Grant Program FAQ. This is our frequently asked questions document that we'll be updating throughout the pre-application and full application time. The 4 project categories for the Urban Grant Program are environmental stewardship and restoration, parks, trails, and public access, environmental education, and urban agriculture and food systems. And your project needs to be in at least one or more of these categories. It can be in more than one. And the eligible applicants are nonprofits, schools and school districts, and public agencies. If you're not one of those, you can also have the option of having a fiscal sponsor. You can read more about fiscal sponsorship in our guidelines, but the fiscal sponsors are the applicants in this case. So if your project has a fiscal sponsor, that fiscal sponsor organization is the primary organization. So there's 2 main project types, 2 solicitations for this grant cycle. And we are talking about the capital one, which includes capital improvement and/or planning of long-lasting improvements, including natural or built construction, restoration, or enhancement that bring nature to urban areas. There's also programs. Programs include classes, trainings, curriculum building, special events, program development, and other impactful community services that help connect people living in urban areas to nature. You may have some aspects of programs in your capital or planning project, such as some community engagement meetings. That could be a programmatic aspect of your capital project. But if you're applying for capital, the main part of your project should be capital or planning. So in summary, for these 2 solicitations, we have a total of $1.5 million available for these 2 types. So there's programs, which are projects between $20,000 and $100,000. There's $750,000 in total available. Those projects will have 2-year grant periods, and we expect the board of directors to award 11 to 15 of those grants. The capital and planning grants are for projects that are between $40,000 and $250,000, again with a total of $750,000 available. These grants will be for 3 years, and we expect the board to award about 4 to 6 grants. So those are some changes. If you have applied to a grant program of ours before, you might have noticed that we've had different types of solicitations. Some other changes are that now we are only requiring match for large organizations that have at least $10 million or more in annual revenue. So those larger organizations are required to turn in 25% match. It's 25% of the project. If you are a smaller organization that does not have an annual revenue of $10 million or more, you do not have to turn in match. We're also using a new grant management software, which we'll talk about. So there's about 8 categories or so that will be scored for a total of 125 points. There's no longer a bonus point section if you've applied with us in the past. So these categories are project planning, budget, goals, and impact. There's community engagement, stakeholder support, and community building, organizational capacity, underserved communities, leadership and innovation, and climate resilience benefits. Our program area is here highlighted. The parts in the gray or the black crossed out sections are not within our jurisdiction. And if you're doing a capital or planning project, it really does need to be within our jurisdiction and within the eligible grants area, which is here in the orange crossed area. The urban grant program really focuses on serving people living in urban areas. So you might have some programmatic aspects that are maybe within our jurisdiction, but outside of the eligible grants area. You can ask us questions about that, but your capital project really does need to be within the urban area. And the darker orange is our deep engagement communities, which we'll discuss in a little bit. There's a draft timeline here. So our pre-application is open. We're talking about the webinar right now, and the pre-applications are due Thursday, November 8th by 5 p.m. There will be a period of eligibility review, and we'll get back to applicants, giving you at least 10 weeks to do the full applications, which are due by 5 p.m. on Thursday, February 23rd. Then there's a staff review period, and the application summaries will be taken to our Citizens Advisory Committee for a public meeting, which we expect to happen on May 22nd. Then the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee, will take their recommendations and we'll summarize these for the board, which we expect the board awards to be July 20th. But please check back on these dates because they are not finalized yet. The board of directors does hold the right to choose how they will award any decisions for the urban grant program. And after this board award date, we expect it to take usually 1 to 3 to 4 months to do the grant agreement process, and work cannot start until your contract is in place. So please keep that in mind. It could be well into the fall until the earliest that your project could start of 2023. So keep that in mind when you're making your scope and project timeline. We'll talk about our online grant management system called WiseHive or Zengen. We just call it WiseHive. Please note that each organization will have just one sign-in for this system. So one email and password will be used for each organization for the pre-application, full application, and if awarded, the active management of the grant. If you have won an award with us in the past, you already have an account, and you can ask me what your email address is for your organization's account. We have a tutorial for our grant management system, this WiseHive tutorial. It's on our website. It has the basic information of how to use it, and if questions come up that can't be answered with a tutorial, you're welcome to reach out to me. In addition to looking through the WiseHive application carefully, we encourage you to read through the application information in the guidelines. It's also going to be a little bit easier to read. So here's an example of, let's look at the second question saying, describe key project deliverables and estimated completion dates. There is more information below that, but it's a little bit small, might be kind of hard to read. So it might be easier to read in the guidelines where we have a little bit more space to have more information. Sometimes there's examples and so forth. So again, we encourage you to look through the grant guidelines. So you'll go to that online link, that first link in the materials section, and you'll be asked to sign in. If you've had an award with us before and you can't remember your password, you can use forgot your password, or if it's your first time signing in, you'll sign up here. Then you'll be at the home page where you'll be asked to create an organization profile. If you've been awarded with us before, we ask that you go in and edit it and update any information that's in there because I've transferred over some basic information, but we'll need more. And if it's your first time in here, you will need to click the button that says create a profile to get started. Then once you've done that, you'll have access to the other projects and pre-applications. You can edit your organization's profile on the homepage as well at any point. So to start the pre-application, you'll click the Add Another button. If you have multiple projects, you can add multiple. And in this example, this homepage shows some other applications and other stages or active grants. But in this case, for the pre-application, you'll just see pre-applications in here unless you've been awarded in the past. When you open up the pre-application, it'll be a simple form. There is a site declaration form for capital and planning applications. We do highly encourage you to get this turned in by the pre-application stage so we can confirm eligibility. But if you're not able to turn that in by the pre-application, you have until the full application to turn it in, but we may not be able to confirm your eligibility until the full application in that case. If you have a fiscal sponsor, that documentation is due at the time of pre-application. But otherwise, the pre-application is a simple way to introduce your project. There are some required questions, so please answer those. If it's not relevant, you can write NA or put 0. There may be some character limits, And this form does not allow any special formatting. So if you're working in it in another document like Word, you'll lose any special formatting like bolding or bullet points when you put it into this form. So here's the pre-application questions. It'll ask you about your organization, what type of grant you're requesting. In this case, it should be planning or capital improvements primarily. Dollar amount, project description, and where your project is located, as well as the landowner declaration information. While you're working on your application and pre-application, you can save changes along the way, and every 5 minutes, a draft will automatically be saved. So you can go back and work on your work throughout the process, but once you hit Save Changes, it should update your web page and take you back to your project page. And this is where, when you are ready to submit your application or pre-application, you'll hit that green Submit button. If you hit it too early and you want to go back and make changes, you will be able to click an Edit button. It'll give you a little warning, and then you can proceed and resubmit your pre-application as long as it's before the 5 p.m. November 8th deadline. Same thing for your full application. You will, though, need to hit that green Submit button to actually turn in your pre-application and full application. We mentioned this multiple times because once you are after the pre-application stage, you will have access to a full application if eligible for capital. You might also see programs in there, but just apply for the one that is relevant. But on this project page, you'll see a pre-application as well as a full application. So there will be multiple things to see. And we really want to make sure that you go to this project page and hit submit before the due date. Got to submit it using that green button. So after you turn in the pre-application, which is due 5 p.m. November 8th, like I said, you may go back and edit and resubmit it, but it does need to be turned in by that due date. Then we'll have a review period for eligibility for about 1 to 5 weeks. And capital applicants will hear back sometime in December, mid-December, or late December, giving at least 10 weeks for your full application period. And the full applications will be due 5 p.m. Thursday, February 23rd. So once you're in the full application, the first section is a bit of an overview, some examples here. They will have some similar questions to the pre-application, such as the type of project, site declaration information, if it hadn't already been turned in, grant category, project location, who it serves, and also the project abstract. And the project abstract is important because this is used when giving summaries to our Citizens Advisory Committee and our board. So this is often used. So we do encourage you to think carefully about this abstract. Then there's a project planning section, which is worth 20 points. It'll ask you to describe the proposed project, the key deliverables, any permissions or permits, the lifetime of the project, and again, the site control question, and the project's readiness for implementation. The project budget is worth 15 points. We ask that you please use our budget template that is on our webpage. There's multiple tabs, including an example tab if you would like to refer to the examples. Those organizations that have an annual revenue of $10 million or more will need to fill out the matching funds section with 25% match. If you are a smaller organization that does not have $10 million in annual revenue, you do not need to turn in matching funds. If you would like to, you can, but it will not influence your project budget scoring, and it would become part of your contract if you are awarded. Nonprofits can ask for up to 5% of indirect costs. And if you have questions about direct and indirect costs, we have examples in Appendix F of our guidelines. The project budget has some questions to give us the wrap-up numbers of the personnel and contracted services, kind of like a basic overview of your budget, as well as matching funds information and a budget narrative, and a question about award amount. The board of directors does reserve the right to award partial funding on projects. They make the ultimate decisions on who is awarded and for how much. So we'd like to give them information on how partial funding would affect your project in the case that they were to award partial funding. Project goals are worth 15 points. We ask you to describe the specific problems, issues, or unserved needs that the project will address, and also to give us some numbers about your impact. So the number of people served, number of youth served, and number of programs provided. In the case that your project does not serve youth, for example, totally fine to say 0. We are just asking for these consistent numbers across the board for our own data tracking. And if awarded, this would become part of your scope of work. And if you have some other goals for your project, you can give us information about those goals here. There's a question about impact worth 15 points, as well as the community engagement, stakeholder support, and community building, also worth 15 points. It'll ask you to describe the lasting impact of the project and to describe the community support and/or community engagement process. If you have documents from letters of support or partnership letters, that will be turned in at the bottom document upload section of the application. There's a 15-point question on organizational capacity as well as underserved communities. We'll ask about the organization's ability to successfully implement this project and if there's past projects or key staff qualifications, as well as describing how the project addresses open space needs for sensitive populations, such as residents of park-poor neighborhoods, underserved or disadvantaged communities, youth, seniors, persons with disabilities, or is located within an under-resourced community. And in this example, you could use if you are within one of our deep engagement communities, which comes from a report from the Open Space Authority called Understanding Our Community, but you may have a different example, such as a Cal Enviro Screen metric, a Title I metric, information from the US Census Bureau. Please just use whatever information. If your community that you're serving is under-resourced or one of these definitions, please tell us what that information is. There's a question on leadership and innovation worth 10 points and climate resilience benefits worth 5 points. They'll ask you to describe how this project employs innovative approaches or encourages collaboration and partnerships, and how does this project enhance or raise awareness about climate resilience. Again, all of our questions are worth points. There's no bonus points. So everything, we do encourage everybody to answer all the questions to the best of their ability for a total possible point of 125. When you're nearing the end of your application, we encourage you to check back at the application checklist. There's project budget, fiscal sponsorship, agreements, letters of support, etc. One thing to note is if you have letters of support, those do need to be submitted by the full application time in order to be considered for the scoring for that section by staff reviewers. If you get partners letters or anything after the fact, after the full application is due, you can send them to our clerk for board consideration, but it will not be able to be influenced in the staff review score, which is given to the board to consider. Some tips and information. We encourage you to start early on the pre-application and the full application, especially for the site control, as well as if you have letters of support or project partners, things that might take some time. We encourage you to read the guidelines carefully and follow all instructions. Make sure that the project deliverables and project budget are consistent. So if you're asking for something in the project budget, we should see how it relates to your project. Be detailed and direct, but also concise. And remember that the staff review team, the Citizens Advisory Committee, and the board may not know the specific jargon of your project in your field, so write for a broad audience. Include photographs, maps, and graphics when possible, and combine similar file types when possible. So if you have multiple photographs, you might put them into one PDF, for example. And if you're able to ask an outside person to review your application, that can be really helpful. Note that all applications are public, so these will be going on our website and the public may be reading your application, so keep that in mind. And if awarded, work cannot be done outside of the grant period. We cannot retroactively reimburse any work that is done outside of the grant performance period. So like I mentioned, fall of 2023 is the earliest start time that we're seeing right now. So keep that in mind when considering when work will begin. And all of our grants are reimbursement based. Like I mentioned, there's a frequently asked questions document that we will continue to update throughout the pre-application and full application time. So to review the eligibility and review process, the pre-applications will be screened for eligibility and applicants will be notified, which will give you at least 10 weeks to submit the full application. Then after full applications are submitted by the end of February, programs and capital projects will have separate review teams. Staff will review each application and each question thoroughly according to the guidelines. And these scores will be averaged for an average staff score, which will be given to our board packet, in addition to the CAC, the Citizens Advisory Committee recommendations. And the board of directors does have ultimate say over who is awarded and for how much. So now we'll turn it over to the live Q&A portion. And if you have any questions or you want to keep my contact information on hand, it is available here. Great. Hello, everybody. I will actually reshare my screen so that you can have our contact information available, as that slide already is gone. One moment.
And while she's doing that, I'll just remind you, as she said, that if you don't think of your questions right now, or maybe your questions are kind of specific to your project, we're happy to talk to you offline and set up a call to go through your particular project.
Excuse me, I'm having a hard time getting the full screen up without losing access to sharing it. Okay. Something to correct in the presentation is I mentioned character limits on the application, and I should have said word limit for one of the questions on the pre-application, and you'll see that listed in there.
And the only other, oh, go ahead.
I was going to clarify the site control declaration. We had a question about that earlier this week. There is a site control declaration form that capital and planning projects will need to have signed and turned in. There's 2 versions, so you'll pick the one that's appropriate for you depending on who the landowner is. And that is due for the pre-application in order for us to confirm eligibility. If you're not able to get that turned in until the full application, you're welcome to turn it in at the full application time, but we won't be able to guarantee eligibility until that is turned in. So you would need to go through that full application process without knowing for sure that your project is eligible. So I hope that clarifies that.
And then one last point of clarification, I can't remember if Jackie already said this, but that the pre-application is required. So we do want to make sure that we get everybody's pre-application in. It's a fairly short form, but it is just that process of, as best we can, confirming eligibility early so that everyone knows they're ready to move on.
So if you have a question, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you could type it, or you can send me an email with your specific project question. And if we don't have any questions, or you might not need to hear other questions that come up, you are welcome to jump off. But this part has been recorded, and these webinars, this one and the program webinar, will be posted to our website soon. So you can always go back and watch the recording. Well, I don't see any questions so far. We'll stay on for a little bit. Oh, I see one. Hi, Michael, you should be unmuted.
Hi, thank you. first, quickly, thank you. I attended both workshops. I attempted to send an email to you, Jackie, regarding our program, and it got bounced back, so I'm sure that was on our end.
Okay.
So I'll try and phone call again, but basically I'm the nutrition director for Morgan Hill Unified School District.
Okay.
I came across some documents that had a 12-acre orchard planned on some of the land. I believe it's in Coyote Valley. It might be on the most southern tip of it. It looks like about 8 years ago it was going forward, and then for whatever reason it did not go forward. So I've been with the district about 4 years. We've taken a couple large farming initiatives forward and growing some of our own produce, and I'm looking to recapitalize on that 12 acres. Would this grant fall into that as a school district?
I think, Michael, we'd have to talk to you offline to understand a little bit more about what you're proposing on that 12 acres, but certainly if you're looking at redeveloping it in some way or enhancing it, I guess I'm not quite clear what you're wanting to do with it, but we'd be happy to set up a call and talk through it in detail.
Okay, perfect. I'll use the 565 extension and leave a message or try and get a hold of you guys.
Perfect.
Feel free to
Thank
do that,
you.
or you can also, in the Q&A, you could type your email and I can reach out to you. I'm sorry you got to bounce back. Our email addresses are long and sometimes it's easy to get typos.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Yes, there's a question about the jurisdiction and where if it's only in California. So the eligible applicants must have projects within California, but specifically within kind of the South Bay region. And I will go back in our slideshow to show that, because it is a little bit confusing. So the project location does need to be, let's see if I can reshare this. It's going to be part of the PowerPoint. I apologize. I don't think that's going to look super clear. One second. Okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with it.
Yeah, that's okay. I think we can summarize by saying it has to be within the Open Space Authority's jurisdiction, which is definitely entirely within the state of California. So if you have a more nuanced question about where the organization's headquartered or something like that, feel free to reach out to us and we can talk through it, but the project does need to be in our jurisdiction. All right, and thanks. A couple of you, we see your emails that are in the Q&A, yes, so Jackie can follow up with those. Thank you for that. But otherwise, I'm not seeing any more questions or hands raised. So again, remember, reach out. We're happy to chat about your specific projects, and Jackie can field any questions you might have.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing your applications and any questions that come in the meantime. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thank you.